your Shark Tank experience definitely is unique. I would say. And so maybe you can share a little bit about where that was in the journey, just timeline wise, and where it was in the world, what was happening in the world, and kind of how that happened, and then we'll get to how you actually ended up raising. But I would love to hear that story.
Yes, absolutely. And when we launched Tiny Organics, it was January 2020. So we were ready to go, right? We met mom where she needed us, when she needed us most, with the pandemic hitting in March. We were actually supposed to be on stage with Michelle Obama in March 2020 in Chicago to kick off our partnership. Of course, that had to be all virtual at that point, right? But it meant that because we were delivering frozen, because mom didn't have to go to the grocery store, we just catapulted, right, in terms of our sales in the earliest days. And it was around this time when we were approached by Shark Tank. We decided, okay, let's give it a go. And so that summer, before we'd figured out any sort of vaccines yet or anything, and my son was still, I had never really left him yet at the time. I had to quarantine. I drove cross country to Vegas. That's where they relocated us to do this one for that season. And I was quarantined for over 2 weeks, where I didn't see anyone in a hotel, right? And then when they bring you into the tank, they wanted to know that you hadn't been exposed to anything, and you wore a mask until you were like entering the tank. But when I got there, I realized, all of the details that we had given for thawing our food, the Tiny Organics food itself, had not been followed, and it was still frozen. And so we were like, how are the sharks going to eat this food if it's like a solid, rock of ice? Right before I was walking into the tank, I was removing the mask, and all I could do at that point was my box breath was coming back to my breath and trying to stabilize my nervous system, right? To be able to walk in there and do the thing. I can say this because we were on the introduction of the season itself, where they showed my COO and I walking into the tank with Tiny Organics there and like the brand, but they actually didn't air us. So even though the sharks were vying for a deal with us, I was able to negotiate really well, and we were thrilled with the outcome, to the point where the shark was jumping up and down on their chair. Like it was incredible. They still did not air us. So I think, that whole experience. I mean, now I guess, the thing that I've learned in life, and what I've always tried to do is the reframe, right? So it's like, okay, there's still lessons and learnings from that experience. And one of them was this, fight or flight mode that founders often get into, where they're just putting out fires and trying to build as fast as they can, right? I think I was able to really understand that I had to come back to myself and to the mindfulness practices, right, that I knew. And honestly, the values driven approach that I was raised with, and wanted to gift to others, because I understood kind of this deep meaning behind it, as a Native American person, right? I'm Turtle Mountain Chippewa. And so our laws, as we call them, are our seven grandfather teachings of the Anishinaabe, which are things like truth, love, humility, bravery. We really try to live by these things. And I thought, okay, there's these moments where, in your founder journey, where it feels like failure almost every day, right? How can we as founders actually sustain ourselves through that and drive forward with a purpose, and a sense of your responsibility? You're doing something greater than yourself, and essentially trying to have a fulfilled life. I think there's been so many points in my journey that from the outside looks like, okay, that's how could that not be a failure, right? But you can actually use it for your greatest good. And I think that's, everything I talk about in the book, that I know we'll get into it in a bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would be so angry if that happened. Like if I went and quarantined for 2 weeks and got in there and pitched, which I'm sure was nerve. I mean, I can't even. I would be so nervous. I mean, I would be so angry. I would literally, because of course, I again, I haven't done that, but I've had some things where I've been featured in, the New York Times, for example, and I did the interview 6 months before the article came out, and the whole time is it going to be this week? Is it going to be this week? It never came, you know. And I can only imagine, because the impact that would have on the business. Obviously, the business did well and scaled, but the impact that would have had would have been I mean, crazy.
And to work with that shark that we actually did the deal with, right? And stuff too, because you don't do that if you don't air.